Welcome to Everyday Buddhism, making every day better by applying the proven tools found in Buddhist concepts. Welcome to episode 17 of Everyday Buddhism, making every day better. I'm honored to introduce our podcast guests, Phakchok Rinpoche and Erric Solomon, who bring us the gift of their combined wisdom, compassion, and teaching excellence in a podcast episode that I know will become one of my all-time favorites. Rinpoche and Erric are the authors of the just-released book, Radically Happy, A User's Guide to the Mind. Thank you to Shambhala Publications and Jess Townsend for reaching out with a reviewer's copy of the book and request to schedule a podcast. It was my good fortune to have the opportunity to discover this jewel of a book and have the pleasure of chatting with the warm and engaging authors. Phakchok Rinpoche is a teacher coming from a long line of meditation masters. His grandfather, Tulku Urgyen, who actually I just mentioned on the previous episode about the different types of meditation. Anyway, his grandfather, Tulku Urgyen, was a meditation master in the Tibetan, Kagyu, and Nyingma lineages. He was renowned for his pointing out instructions of the mind. Tulku Urgyen's great-grandfather, Chogyur Lingpa, became a 19th century Tibetan legend for revealing great wisdom teachings. Rinpoche received ordination from His Holiness the Dalai Lama and was educated in Buddhist philosophy and meditation, studying with some of the most accomplished masters of modern times. He completed his education in advanced Buddhist studies in India, receiving the Khenpo title. He currently travels across the globe teaching at Buddhist centers, universities, and monasteries. As you will see in our conversation, Rinpoche lives much like us with a wife and children and is familiar with the troubles of everyday life. And surviving the great Nepalese earthquake of 2015, he has had more hardship and suffering than most. Yet, he teaches combining a profound wisdom with a fresh and humorous observation relevant to our fast-paced, always-on modern lives. Erric Solomon brings a career as a Silicon Valley technology entrepreneur to a serious study and practice in Tibetan meditation. He offers the thinking of a technologist combined with the depth of a seasoned meditation practitioner, resulting in a crystal clear teaching presentation that speaks to us in an everyday way. Erric is currently an invited speaker and teacher, leading seminars and retreats in corporations, prisons, temples, and Buddhist centers across the U.S. and Europe. Thanks to the generosity of Rinpoche's and Erric's time and teaching, the conversation you are about to listen to is filled with more diamonds of wisdom and insight than I can count. So on to the interview. I'm so pleased to have you on our show today. It's awesome. Your book, first of all, I have to talk about the book. I have to talk about the beauty of the book. And since we have a little video here, I can just pretend that everybody sees me, but they won't. But this is beautiful. It's just the most awesome book. You're engaged from the very beginning, just from the design aspect. So clearly you spent a lot of time, many, many years, designing it, thinking about it, and I heard a little bit about that on your Facebook Live presentation. But it really shows and it really engages. And I don't care whether somebody's a Buddhist or not. If they see that title and then pick up that book, I think they'll be hooked for sure. I've been around the block with Buddhism for like 30 some years, but this book really engaged me, and I was almost surprised.
how engaging it was. It was the 28 exercises. It was just amazing. But so it's perfect for my audience. I'm going to explain a little bit about it so you know who you're talking to. When you start a podcast, they tell you to create an avatar and say, this is the person who I think is going to be listening to this podcast. Now, I'm a career coach and a lay minister within a non-sectarian Buddhist program that's based on the Mahayana Japanese Buddhism, primarily Shin and Zen, Great Dawn Center of Oneness Buddhism. So we come from the lineage of a Jodo Shinshu lineage, but the Bright Dawn Center created a Buddhist practice and a Buddhist perspective of being about every day. Okay, not focusing on traditional practices within schools and having to be so focused on it, but take what works, right? Take what works, which really isn't what the Buddha wanted us to do, right? Take what works. So my avatar for this podcast was somebody who maybe didn't care about Buddhism, maybe didn't want anything to do about Buddhism, but wanted every day to be better, however that can be. And most of the people that I've gathered a pretty big following so far, and I started at the end of July, but boy, the comments I get are stuff that I think you have talked to in this book consistently. It's, how do I get over harboring anger? How do I get over harboring resentment? How do I have skillful behavior or mindfulness in the workplace? How do I deal with the suffering with the people in my life? How do I create meaning in the workplace? How do I build good intentions? How do I live my life with a good attitude? How do I deal with depression and hate in the world? And another biggie is, I kind of like Buddhism, but I don't believe in all the metaphysical aspects, so I can't be a Buddhist. So that's that's my audience, and I think you address it perfectly in the book. But before I give it over to you with a couple questions, I saw on your Facebook Live that you told a story. I think Rinpoche told the story. It may have been a two-parter about how you came up with radical and how you debated about using the word happiness. Can you tell me that story?
So the idea was when we talk about these happiness and radical, I found out that have two kind of a group of people usually think about, I am already quite happy, so why I need for a books that makes me happy again. So for that kind of group, I prefer to say that yes, I agree with you, but at the same time they have some radical way of doing things that usually we are not heard before possible. So that's why it's a word of radical that I like to say. And the second group is going to be, I'm very unhappy. I don't think I can be happy at all. And for that kind of group, then I'm prepared to say, yeah, it's possible that I think you should try to see that some steps and see how you can actually get it better. And the funny part of the word of radical in happiness that is engaging, a lot of people are quite happy with to see that, and some people, especially long-term practitioners, are not so happy to hear the word of happiness. So I found out that everybody search for happiness, whether you are long-term or short-term or beginner or non-beginner or believer or non-believer. Actually, end of the day, sincerely, from our heart, actually what we urge for is actually just well-being. You can actually explain happiness. You can actually say peace, calm, satisfaction. You can use different words, but basically what really have universal word for everybody is actually happiness that we use all the time. So I thought that using the word of happiness is not really bad idea. Then, point of view, and we say short-term benefits and long-term liberation or freedom. So short-term benefits can be the happiness. So this is the idea of that I begin sometimes in the talk lately. I actually begin with that because I met a lot of older practitioners that they are not so happy to hear or of happiness.
I think the thing is that we really looked at how fast the world is moving these days and how so many people who are coming to our seminars, programs, were looking for a new narrative for their lives. But where Buddhism traditionally starts, Four Noble Truths, wasn't really meeting people at the exact place that they were. Of course, the message does, but what if we play with the language? What if we keep the ultimate message the same, but really how can we meet people exactly where they are? Everybody's trying to cope with this crazy, always on, wired world where there's this constant interruption. I mean, the social media is great. It allows us to communicate like never before. At the same time, it's constantly begging us to come do something. And they've also done a lot of research to figure out how to manipulate us, how to get us kind of hooked, as you can say. So we just saw so much stress among family, friends, students, so forth, and everybody, as Rinpoche was just saying, has a happiness strategy. Everybody cares about achieving certain goals for themselves. The problem is we get kind of emotional about whether we achieve the result or not. And so how do you find the resilience so that when things don't go well, you're still okay? At the same time, when things do go well, can you really truly enjoy them? Because far too often, when in that perfect day, we're thinking, oh, too bad every day. It's a subtle undercurrent of dissatisfaction that comes. So we picked the radically happy because radical in Latin means root. We feel that the root of happiness is somehow slipped through our fingers because we don't know where to place our attention. Or even if we do, we don't know how to do it. And then the other reason we say radical is because probably this way we go for happiness right now is a habit that perhaps doesn't always work. So what to change that habit? Maybe we have to do something a little bit radical. So there's coming together of two different perspectives. I came from a modern Silicon Valley entrepreneurial culture. Rinpoche came from an ancient culture of compassion and wisdom that goes back for centuries. And yet we met in a very similar place. And that was out of that was the birth of this book.
That impressed me so much because I'll tell you a little truth about it. When I first saw the book introduction from your publicity person, and it was radical happiness. I thought I had a little judgment going on in there, and I immediately said, what's this radical happiness business? I mean, it's happiness, right? Or it's not happiness, but radical happiness. But I totally get it. It's the root of happiness. It's sort of like the Heart Sutra, right? The heart of the Prajnaparamita. This is the heart of how to be happy. And what the other thing I love about it, and I think what speaks to my audience or speaks to my mission, whether my listeners want to hear it or not, my mission is mindfulness is awesome. And helping people to develop a habit of mindfulness in this crazy world that you were talking about, always on, everyday world, is one of the best things we can do. But then again, the concept and the mindfulness, I'm sure you've heard the term McMindfulness. It's taken on a sort of a tone that they think it's like it's all about mindfulness. But to me, the beauty of Buddhism is what you're bringing out in this book. So when you say a user's guide to the mind, sure, it's a user's guide to the mind. It should be the user's guide to life, because you're three. And now this is kind of a kickoff to your introducing the format of the book, how you broke it down into mastering your mind, but also mastering your heart, or interconnected happiness, and cultivating dignity, which that was a word I had never heard thrown in something like this that really made me stop and think. But that's, to me, takes this mindfulness concept and puts the Buddhist meat behind it, the Buddhist teachings behind it, because we're talking about the heart. The heart has to be in it. And so that's what I love. So this is an introduction to say, tell me about the three segments, you know, mastering the mind, mastering the heart. Those of you who don't have the book, it's got three, it's divided into easy 3 segments and an introduction. And it's like, okay, here's how to master your mind, here's how to master your heart, and here's how to master your dignity. And it has 3 basic steps under each one. And so it's really logical, and it flows, I think, to the Western mind. Okay, well, now I'll do this, now I'll do that. The 28 exercise may overwhelm them, but I think they'll figure out how to work them. So tell me about how that is, and just explain it a little more to our audience.
Well, thank you for the question, Wendy. First of all, I want to say that we did look a lot at a bunch of different programs that were out there because we wanted to see really, you know, did we have something unique to say? And I think both of us felt that if everyone in the world did mindfulness-based stress reduction, for example, the world would definitely be a better place. At the same time, if you're already putting this effort in to do a little bit of, you know, mindfulness practice every day, if you could understand a little bit beyond just circumstance, then the same effort could be actually make a much more profound transformation in your life. So the thing is that right now we're constantly evaluating. I studied with Rinpoche's grandfather, who was one of the most amazing human beings, if not the most amazing human being. And he said, the very basis of our discontentment is the constant evaluation of our quality of our experience. We're always like this little ticker tape at the bottom of our screen. It's always saying, well, I like that, I don't like that. And then we start thinking about it. And this actually brings us sometimes to great anxiety, or great, you know, but really turns us away from who we really are. So when you're meditating to lower your stress, to feel better, all these are worthy goals, and it will work, but you're still in this land of evaluating experience. So how can you drop that? How can you interrupt that? And what's the benefit of that? And that's something we go into quite a bit in the book. So we have, as you said, 3 steps: basic happiness, mastering the mind; interconnected happiness, mastering the heart. Now, interconnected happiness, traditionally, you don't just teach meditation, for example. We don't use the word meditation as much. We call exercise. It's just like you exercise your body, you can exercise your mind. So normally we would talk to people about how you are in the world, how you relate to others, uncovering our natural warm-heartedness as part of the richness of human experience, along with as part of what's traditionally called meditation. And that's another thing that's often missing in many of the secular programs. So this was really important to us to talk about, is how we're interconnected with each other and the world, and how that can also help us to find meaning and purpose in life. And then finally, radical happiness, where we bring these 2 together, and by tasting. And from the very beginning of this book, you're going to taste something. You're going to experience something almost in the first pages. And gradually you have confidence in that. You'll know that experience for yourself, and it won't matter if someone else comes and says it's all, you know, BS. I tasted it. And out of that confidence, out of that knowing of how your mind functions, and how sometimes you can actually own your own mind, how your heart functions, and how you can own your own heart, out of that confidence is the beginning of dignity. And that's the key to radical happiness. It's not that radically happy people don't experience sadness, loss, anger, the full display of human experience. It's about resilience. It's about always finding a way to be well or okay, even in the midst of tragic circumstances. So that's the basic idea. And one last thing is, yes, there are 28 exercises, but each one is easy to do on its own, so that you can try it. It's not too much. It'll fit into a busy life, and they slowly build on each one. And if you don't have to do them all, you can find a few that really work for you, and that will work too.
I think the purpose of the book that I want to see is only very simple. I just want to, I wish that anybody do some exercise from the book and they realize that they actually do not control, or they don't have no, I don't want to use the word control, but they have no much power on their own mind or emotions as what we all believe in. So that doubt I want to rise from that book. And when you have that doubt, I think it's beginning of becoming wise person. And so second thing that I want to see from the book is the person is knowing that wanting to be happy for yourself and your loved one, for your family, for others, the way we choose to become happy, to approach those, to achieve the happiness, actually most of the time we do not good decisions. We don't go into right directions. We don't use good methods and to achieve that happiness. I think these two doubts I introduce from the book. For anybody who listen and who go through the book, I want to see that doubt come up. Then I think that doubt is actually going to be the doubt that can be the dawn of a wisdom within your heart. And that doubt going to be the dawn of the wisdom. That is what I wish for.
You know, the doubt thing, I love that you're introducing the doubt, because how many times do we run across, and, you know, meditation by itself or a mindfulness practice by itself, people sometimes take it up and they can be long-term practitioners, and then they'll say, I've done this for 10 years and I don't think my life has changed at all. I don't feel any happier. And Rinpoche, I think you addressed this on that Facebook Live, saying this, I forget exactly how you used the word. I think you said what was missing is reflection. I think you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the reflection part is that doubt, the introduction of the doubt, meaning bringing your experience back and looking at it and saying, how am I using it? And I really think the key is the interconnected happiness, because meditation and mindfulness practice, unless you're doing metta or Tonglen or something, is so individual, you know, and it's what about me? What am I getting from this? I'm not enlightened, right? So yeah, I love the doubt thing. I think that's excellent. Would you like to address what a reader can take from each section, you know, as far as an individual, or any way you want to address each section?
I think what I like to say, the first thing is that it's very interesting. Like when I say, oh, do you know, I ask anybody to do meditation, they say yes. And I say, what kind of meditation do you do? And they says, I do this, I do, you know, focus my breath and this and that, all that. And I said, okay, now important to reflect ourselves. And I used to say this now, that meditation is blind, but when you do reflection, then meditation becomes the antidote. Until that, meditation cannot transform you completely, because meditation is blind. When I say this, for the beginning, people say, what are you talking about? I said, now you need to learn to reflect yourself. How is your being, and how is you behaving? Are you behaving correctly? Did you check your manners? Do you check how you look and emotional levels, all that? And then start looking back and say, oh, yeah, okay, I need to reflect myself. Okay, all right. So it's quite strange to see that, honestly, one of the biggest situation that I see is not taking into your mind or reflecting to see how to take it in. So that's why when you read the book, I met a person saying, "Oh, Rinpoche, I love your book and very good." And I say, "How long you took to read?" I say, "Oh, within the 2 days I finished." And I said that we need to work this book for 4 years, and you finish in 2 days. and then I said, now I tell. Yesterday I met some people. I said, they said to me, "Rinpoche, how I'm going to, what kind of things I'm going to get from the book?" I say, "Yeah, whatever you want to get doesn't matter, but please read slowly. Read slowly and few pages, 4 to 5 pages, and you reflect a little bit and think about, try to sip in, because mind and emotional, it takes time to sip in. That's why the wisdom grows the pace of experience. The knowledge grows when you know things, when you understand things. But know and understand does not make you experience and become a wise or gain wisdom. That takes time to sip in. So please read slowly a few pages and reflect yourself and go to do the things, normal thing in life, and reflect again and do some little exercise you can and just reflect." Then I said, "I guarantee you, you're going to get something from that book." But you read like within 2 days, like in coffee shop and when you do the commuting time or before go to bed. Honestly, how much you're going to sip into it, I'm not sure about it.
So the book has, as you said, 3 sections. First is basic happiness. Now, basic happiness is actually where we learn to just find the home of our mind, of ourselves. You know, when we looked at our own teachers, yes, they always talked about meditation. They also talked about death and permanent, life is suffering, all these classic Buddhists. But they themselves, even though many of them suffered a lot in their lives and overcame incredible, tremendous challenges, they themselves were always happy. They themselves were always well. So how do we find that home? Rinpoche tells a story that's a classic example that he received from his teacher when he was young. Don't be like a dog, be like a lion. When you throw a stone at a dog, the dog will chase the stone. And isn't that how we are with thoughts and emotions? Every thought that comes, we have a special reaction, and we have to chase it, think about it, and so on and so forth. A lion, however, you throw a stone at a lion, the lion doesn't care at all about the stone. The lion turns to see where the stone came from. And if you're the stone thrower, either you run away or you get eaten. But either way, there are no more stones. So just learning to turn our attention away from always chasing thoughts and emotions. And in the beginning, just by being present in the face of whatever thoughts and emotions come, we begin to be, it's the first step to becoming like a lion. This metaphor develops over the course of the entire book. So in the beginning, we learn to not react to thoughts. We call it always react to thoughts the same way, that we just come into the present moment. We learn to relax comparing. This is basic happiness. We learn to relax comparing. This habit of thinking about thoughts becomes quite big and often self-denigrating, where we're comparing our life to what our life should be, and then we feel bad about it. Of course, it's good to have goals, but because of this comparison habit, it has an emotional content that's not always so beneficial. I used to think I had to do everything out of insecurity in order to be successful. This was the theme of my whole Silicon Valley experiences, putting myself in someplace where I felt insecure, and then I could do great things. And I learned over time that actually I did even better things when I didn't get so emotional. So this is what we mean by relax the comparing. It's not eliminate all comparing, but just relax. And finally, be present, because in this crazy, always on world, we aren't going to be able to spend all our time in our room practicing, exercising our mind. But we can use all of experience as a reminder to come back into the present moment. So we give you step-by-step way to do that. And then we have at the end of each section a daily plan, which part of it is exercising through different practices we give, but then also reflecting. to see how it's working. Because if you don't reflect, if you don't think of the logic, the why, and and how you're doing it relative to the why, it's much harder to make a lot of progress. So that's basic happiness. Interconnected happiness is where we contemplate the interconnected nature of reality. The fact that what you do affects me, what I do affects you, what we all do affects the planet, what happens in our environment affects us. It's common sense, and yet we see that there's this huge disease sweeping across cities, all over modern cities, Asia, US, wherever, where people are feeling lonely like never before. Because we're always cutting ourselves off from this fundamental expression of reality, this interconnected. So first we need to understand it, and then we need to begin to look and see, are we living in harmony with it? You see all these experiments now. One that I'll just tell quickly is people were asked to evaluate in this one study bills that might come up before Congress. And people were all over the map, and they gave all kinds of interesting responses until you told them whether it was Democrat proposal. And then immediately, based on whether they were Democrat or Republican, they loved it or hated it.
Right.
We're making our own decisions, but actually we're just continually a product of all our habits and our culture and the way we were raised. And so by contemplating interconnectedness and seeing, becoming more and more aware of how we're responding to the world, we can begin to see ourselves, the world around us, authentically, and be free from all our conditioning, which brings us to relax the judging, where 100 milliseconds after I meet you, I've made a whole bunch of have a whole bunch of ideas about you, and they're very, very hard to change, even when they're wrong.
All right.
In Silicon Valley, I would see the best technologists. When new data came in, it didn't matter what they thought before; they could just let it go and adopt a new position. And yet, science is telling us it's very, very difficult for most of us to do that. So by constantly uncovering something we already possess, which is our natural warm heart, that already's there. It's just covered over. So by again and again through exercises, uncovering that warm heart, we can begin to relax the judgment. And be attentive, we bring this warm heart into every situation, every interaction, and that strengthens it, deepens it further. And what happens? Well, we find meaning and purpose in life.
Right. Right. And those exercises, I really are very good. The mini exercises, I think. Well, if the one really caught my eye, what was the warm-hearted mini break? I love the warm-hearted mini break. I'm starting to adopt that daily since reading your book, because I was doing not warm-hearted. I was doing mini breaks, but the introduction of the warm-hearted mini breaks softened my responses to everyone and softened my judgment. So I just had to say I love those exercises. So continue on your journey.
I think the external world and the internal world is a little bit different dynamic. External world, I'm talking about careers, life, insurance, house, security, and things in life. We need to have some kind of comparison or some kind of judgments or some kind of clinging. Without that, we're not going to be approached towards that and to succeed to achieve it. When you use that similar pattern or habit or the tools within the internally, then you actually creating your own beginning of your failure. Now you use internally such as judgment, internally comparison, and internally attachment, actually that produce failure in spirituality or meditatively or emotionally or love or life, happiness, and everything. So now the idea is how you're going to manage that. How we're going to use enough for comparison healthy comparison, healthy judgment, and healthy clinging for external world for living, and not using that same tool internally within to the Taurus mind, then I think the exercise and having a reflecting, knowing, and practicing different exercise can only way to achieve how much you need to apply all these tools and without failure. This is what I want to say.
I have so many people come to me when they start learning to meditate or be mindful or start any practices, even a metta practice. They'll say, they're somehow, when you start introducing Buddhist concepts, even if you don't introduce them with Buddhist terms, right? They start thinking that there's a goal of enlightenment or something, right? And then they wake up every morning and there's still the same old schmuck, right? So they keep coming back to you and asking you, I must be failing, I'm failing. And that is one of the hardest things to overcome, I think, as someone who's helping someone through this practice. That you speak to that, I think, is so important, because you have that reflection thing that you mentioned earlier is very important. You can keep coming back to that. Is like it's a circle inside, not a circle outside. It's a circle inside. How am I doing in my responses to the world? How am I doing? How did my thoughts just go today? What did I? We have a practice in Japanese Buddhism. It's based on I think a Morita psychology called Nikon. It's a gratitude practice. I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's a really focused reflection on, how did I help people today? How did I hurt people today? And you bring that into your life, and that's what I think what you're saying a little bit is that's how you measure your success, is without being judgmental on yourself, because a lot of I think Western people are pretty critical of themselves. So I think that's an important. They're sort of walking that fine line, right?
Mm-hmm. I think that
very traditional. This is very, very traditional.
Yes.
I think the thing is that one of the themes that comes up early in the book is about celebration. Because what we see, like a person from an ancient culture will go, gosh, after countless lifetimes of harming others, today I had a moment where I thought of someone else. I had one today, I can tomorrow. And whereas a modern person inevitably goes, oh, isn't it terrible? No matter what I do, I can only have like a brief moment where I'm thinking of someone other than myself. And so you have to appreciate the fact you are making, even though you may think it's a small step, it's a step. And how wonderful it is. And by seeing how wonderful it is, and that you made one, certainly you could make two. This person wrote me the other day, because there's this exercise called Creating Space in the book, I think you must have read, where they said, well, I can only create space for about 3 seconds, and then I get distracted. Well, of course, right? That's normal. So I wrote back and said, isn't that great? 3 seconds. Then you can do another 3, right? And they wrote back and they said, oh, yeah. And so you see, the thing is that we go so quickly into judging ourselves, and that
right.
The quality of experience is the basis of all our trouble. And so what Rinpoche often says is, when you do it with your whole heart. It means don't evaluate, do it. Later you can reflect and see, is there something different way I should approach it? How could I? While you're doing it, you just do it as authentically as possible.
Yeah, that is so good. I mean, it's even when someone starts with meditation, it's the same thing. I can't meditate. Oh my goodness, how many times do people come to me? I can't meditate. And I'll say, why? Because I can't stop my thoughts. And I'll say, well, whoever told you needed to do that? That's what your thoughts do, right? They're not supposed to stop them. That leads me to another kind of area I wanted to get into. That's, I think it's in part 3 mostly, but I think you introduced it in part 1 a little bit. It's the awareness factor. I detected a little traditional Dochen or Mahamudra coming in there? I don't know, but I know you don't talk about Tonglen as Tonglen, and you don't talk about a lot of things as those. But I see the traditional roots coming through in these nice practices that have no stigma of that stuff that would confuse people. But what I liked is how you introduced awareness, and how you introduced meditating without an object and catching that moment of awareness between thoughts, and that just catching that brief moment, whether it's 10 seconds or whatever, is a very, you made it a celebratory thing. And that I hope people feel that, because I think that's something that's a little bit missing in most of the traditional presentations and teachings and books out there. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, first, of course, everything has, the whole book has the flavor of what we received from our teachers.
Right.
And it's important to say that. But we did play with language a little bit, and play with how to present it to make it accessible for as I've said, for modern life. At the same time, people often think that the important thing about meditation, typically it's like the most common one is you feel your breath going in, going out, you bring your attention, you rest on your breath. And it's meditation when I'm doing that, and it's just when I'm not. But actually that moment of noticing we become distracted.
Right.
The most interesting and special, magical moment of the whole experience. Because at first, of course, we notice we're distracted. We think, oh, shoot, I'm distracted. Right? And we maybe even have some more thoughts about it. But gradually we learn to just, okay, we were distracted. We bring our attention back to our breath. And then gradually we notice that we are aware that we're distracted, whether or not we have a thought. We don't need the thought to know we're distracted. We just know we're distracted. And you can say that's the first glimpse we have of being a lion, of turning our attention all the way to where not the thoughts and emotions, but who has them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's that's the important theme of the whole book, and we end there, and at the very end of the book, on the awareness itself, the knowing quality of mind.
The being aware, I think, is we're not actually going into too much of Dzogchen or Mahamudra's things. What we try to actually say that when you are aware that comes in your mind, thought, and without judging it, without comparing it, without clinging that thought naturally has the space. Then with just being and maintaining, you actually see naturally, be the presence in that moment. And you are actually free from everything without trying it to be free.
Mm-hmm.
So now that is the really essence of the beginning of the essence of what is the true wisdom that taught to us, what our first teacher 2,600 years ago. Of course, I don't know the in-depth listeners. I think it's not interesting, but I just want to say the first chapter or the second chapter, 8,000 verse, Panchaparamita Sutra, says that mind is not truly established, but mind is actually luminosity. And that is the word that I want to use. And the present moment, that awareness, actually we try to introduce you that the quality of the mind that is already innate with us, every single thought arises. And that is actually the one way to cultivating dignity, or a way to see that you have that already. You just need to be recognized or need to be trained or to see it.
That's excellent. And you tie that into the dignity part too, which is, yeah, that's a word I've never seen in any Buddhist book or any book on meditation, dignity. And it's great because I was taught by my teachers that there's that sense of confidence that you have to have.
Yes.
It's so important to have that confidence, because that confidence is like the antidote to all that judging and
Yes.
clinging and right. But I've never seen a meditation book, a beginning Buddhism book, ever introduce that neat concept of dignity, that when you take teachings with teachers, especially I think from the Tibetan tradition more than other traditions, that's a very strong strong teaching you get, and sometimes it's just a feeling. I think that, I don't know, I always perceived it as a feeling that I got from the teacher, that feeling of confidence, that they sort of, and I don't mean it magically, mystically, but there was a feeling of confidence that they imbued in you by, yes, if you practice this one practice, you're practicing all practices, and if it feels good, you're doing, it's all right, it's okay. Whereas I think our Western mind is constantly saying, I'm doing it wrong, I'm doing it wrong, I'm doing it wrong, I'm doing it wrong, right? So that's, I just loved that, and I think your practices, I hope everybody gets that when they try the practices, because I think they will, if they, like you said, if they even do a practice, you'll get something from it from the minute you do it, especially that creating space, which before we finish today, I don't want to forget that you do have that as a guided meditation on your website or someplace, right?
If you go to either SoundCloud and look up Radically Happy, or radicallyhappy.org, and look at, there's a blog post on creating space.
Okay.
Guided meditation. You can just sit, relax, and just listen, and I'll lead you through the entire practice.
That's great, because I will probably post all these links on my podcast website. So in addition to the link to the book, of course, that goes without saying, but I will post those links, because I think that there's some people are still into that guided meditation. They need that to start. So I think that's very good.
We found that when we actually lead creating space exercise, that almost the entire room, it's so magical it's fun to watch, because everybody comes in and they're all stiff, and it's all going on this book tour, people coming from work. So
right.
All that day with them, and we do creating space sometimes at the very beginning, and you can see at the end of just 3 or 4 minutes, everybody's body language is different. So I think if people are having trouble from the book, if they go to our website or to the SoundCloud channel, then they'll find something, and I'm pretty sure they'll taste this feeling of spaciousness the very first time.
Yeah, I think there is a difference to it, but then reading words and then trying to hear them back to yourself, and and again, I think it comes back to this grasping of, I'm not doing it right, I'm not doing it right, of course I'm not doing it right. So then the other thing I wanted to talk about is quickly, some of you just have so much in this could be a textbook. Is it going to be a textbook of some sort for some place?
Well, we've been exploring with a few professors and educators how to do that. We have a few people that are interested in working with us that way. It's kind of early to say. It's our hope. We wrote the book partly with that in mind.
Yeah, it feels it. I mean, from the minute I opened it up, it felt like a textbook, and then now I'm using it in my daily practice and referring to it as a textbook. And I keep thinking, well, if this could be kind of altered, it could be a great textbook for students and children, because some of these practices would be easy for children to engage in, I believe, So, I mean, I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I just wanted to share that observation that it's text-like.
Yeah, I like user guide, because textbook is kind of dry.
Yeah.
I think that one thing I can say about this book is it's not dry.
No, it's not dry. Just the look of it. It's just so cheerful and joyous by the graphics and the art within it. Now, the daily plans, and one question I had, I'm thinking about how my listeners would deal with these daily plans. And I know you talk about them that you could pick one, and use that and then move to another. But if you have daily plans for the radical happiness, you have daily plans for mastering the mind, you have daily plans for the heart and mastering dignity. And then I think at the end, you have a combination one. Do you? I'm not sure. Do you?
Well, you can say that the daily plan for radically is the combination, bringing everything together.
How would you recommend? The one thing I could hear people saying, because in listening to my listeners, is I don't know where to start, because they're trying to do too much, like Rinpoche was talking about. They're trying to just read the whole book, and if I don't get it in a heartbeat, I'm going to. Should they stick with mastering the mind for a very long time, like 3 months? Or should they, do you know what I'm saying? These are the kind of questions people ask you.
I understand. I think everybody's different. And the way we wrote the book, a little bit, you could skip around if you want. I think it's good to read the first part before the 3 kinds of happiness, just to get basic logic. And then I think that, my advice is always start a little bit small. Don't try to, we always get something new, we get excited, and we try to do so much, and then slowly, we, instead of building success, we say, I'm going to do this for and then it's 35, and then it's 30, and it's 15, and then it's almost none. So instead, we talk about how to build up gradually, how to just do what you can do, and then add to it. So even starting with 2 or 3 minutes a day, but doing it every day, is better than doing 40 minutes when you have time and never doing it the rest of the time. So I think that people should just play with the book and see how it works for them. But of course, for most people, they probably find it helpful to start with basic happiness and then interconnected happiness. But I could see some people might go the other way.
Well, I think it would be beneficial if they got a taste of all of it, even though the introduction gives all of it. Because to me, the second part, the mastering the heart and interconnected happiness, is so strong and so important and so somewhat missing in the typical teachings right now. I think that if people played with those exercises a little bit, it might teach them how to feel it, meditate from the heart, creating spaciousness in a way that they may never have done before. So I think they should probably play with all of it, but I just wanted to know what you thought, because I know if I start recommending this book and talking about it on my podcast, I'm going to get barraged with, how do I do this kind of questions. So, and I plan on introducing it. I told on one of my podcast Facebook sites, I said, this book is so perfect for our listeners that I'm thinking about making it required reading for this Facebook group. So we may try that.
I tell you what, I'll offer to your Facebook group, if people have questions, you just ping me, I'll come on and I'll try my best to answer something. So that if your listeners like the book, then I'd like to help them.
Awesome. That would be good, because I was thinking of maybe doing a whole book study around it and starting a little mini group, because it's so much speaking to the audience that we have there. The other thing I wanted you guys to talk about is, because this is not something I've ever heard before, except in maybe some other teachings I've taken with my teachers, is the kindness of things. I love that.
I like to cherish my life and see how grateful and fortunate that I am. But what I feel is we're really missing out is how many things that we have in home, like cups, waters, and things. Right now I'm in New York City, and 10 years ago I met a person in one of the lunch group we had organized by one of my friends. He was working for the New York water resource from Catskill Mountain somewhere 100, 200 miles away, or somewhere very far away, and they bring all that Catskill Mountain water bring to New York City. He explained how important, how good quality water in New York City are. Right now, the 10 years after, I remember that. And morning I wash my face and things. I think how I'm so grateful and I'm so thankful for the water. And I'm so happy to actually to have that water. So for me is not only just thinking of kindness of the person who love me and who care me, but I like to think of kindness of earth, kindness of the building, the wind, the cloud, everything. So I feel everything is very beautiful and alive and blessed. Actually, everything is actually blessing you without knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
That is actually a way to cherishing my life, holistic way, and a more alive way, and not just seeing I need anything. I need just a person to love me. I need to have some. I'm lucky. No, everything is actually fine. You have some person have a quite a smelly, dirty couch, but that is very thankful. You can actually sit on that. Homeless have a blanket. This having it, such a beautiful one blanket. And I see one in New York and homeless with a beautiful dog, and the dog is really gently and humbly putting his dog face and head on his knee and looking at the owner, and owner is sleeping on down. And I went to give $2 to the owner, and owner is very happy, and dog slowly looking at me. And I thought dog would bite me because it's quite. But the whole thing that human nature, I feel that we are neglected. We're always drawn into feelings, but we never cherish of kindness of things and around us and the bigger world and individuals. This, I think, is for me is very, very important. And right now, I'm talking with you. I can actually feel my life actually changing. Just telling you, and it reminds me about things that I have right now in front of me.
That's so true, and it's that reflective gratitude. Like I was talking about that Nikon practice, I think it's so important. We don't do that in this culture, hardly. I think we have a practice that's kind of based on, I think, you talk about this, Eric, in your book about kvetching. So it's like I think our culture is built on what we can complain about every day. That the heat isn't working right, and why do we keep losing power when there's a windstorm, and why does this happen? Why does that happen? Instead of like Rinpoche, like you say, in the book, I think you say, the kindness of the flower, the kindness, it's all around us, and you can feel it if you take a little time.
Yes.
Yeah, and just let it sink in.
Yes. I mean, we've all suffered trauma, some people much more than others. But one way to begin to heal ourselves is to see how much we are product of love. Even no matter how bad our childhood was, somehow, first, we were born.
Yes.
People that came before us, how they had to be caring for them in order for, through our ancestors, for us to even be born. Then we made it to adulthood, no matter what we went through. And the more we can feel the kindness of things and see there was, even in our trauma, some kindness, some love produced it all, the better we'll be able to heal ourselves to become wholly integrated in with ourselves, but also with the rest of our phenomenological universe.
Absolutely. I think it's a great way to stop for this session, because I know you have another engagement you have to get to. Is there anything you can say to my audience? One thing, one word of wisdom, whatever you want to leave us with.
My going to be very straightforward message to all of the people who's listening, that whatever you do, try to do from your heart. That's going to be difficult in the beginning, take sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, but when the heart begins open, the feeling of openness, and everything becomes you see and you feel and you are a different person and you are in a different world and you can see things differently. That is I want to say. And you can buy the book, it's very good. And but that the same room, then I'm here going through the books 2 years ago, and what I repeating in my mouth is actually wishing everybody happy and cause of happiness, and I wish everybody free from suffering and cause of suffering, and that is the I repeating in when I'm listening the book for 7 days, from morning 10 o'clock, evening 5 to 6 o'clock every day, so 7 days in New York City, So I think it's the right place in New York City, in the right book, right way of, this is what I really, what I did for is this, and I hope the people who read this, I hope some changes in life. Thank you very much from my side.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much.
Thanks again, and with deep bows to both Rinpoche and Erric for this wonderful conversation. I hope it inspired you as much as it did me. I also hope you will pick up a copy of the book Radically Happy, A User's Guide to the Mind. In the spirit of our everyday practical approach to Buddhist teachings on this podcast, this book could truly be our handbook. I have read it, and I am rereading it, and I'm using the exercises in my daily practice. I can promise it will help you discover and connect with basic happiness, interconnected happiness, and radical happiness. And of course, you will find links to the book and their website with blogs and the guided meditation mentioned in the podcast on my website. As their book dedication reads, quote, "This book is dedicated to the contentment and well-being of everybody everywhere." I, too, dedicate this podcast episode to the contentment and well-being of everybody everywhere. That's it for today's episode. Thank you for joining me. And thanks to everyone who listens to this podcast, comments on my website or the new public Facebook group, and donates to help me keep the content written, fresh, produced, and distributed. If I haven't replied to your messages yet, I will. I always try to reach out with a private email of thanks, but be patient because I'm happy to say that the numbers are growing. And as always, if you like this podcast, please consider supporting my work through a recurring or one-time donation on my Patreon page at www.patreon.com/everydaybuddhism or through the donate page on my website, everyday-buddhism.com. Until next time, keep making your everydays better.